What's up everybody, I'm Dan and welcome to Backpacking Adventures. I'm getting ready to go on a winter trip this week and I'm taking a look at what gear I'm going to bring and what food I'm going to take specifically to keep warm. So today I want to give you my 5 not so obvious tips on how to stay warm and keep warm while you're backpacking. Like I said, I'm going on a trip and I'm trying to decide what I need to bring. So I figured I'd share some of these ideas with you. If you're new to backpacking in the winter or the cold and you're thinking about trying it and you don't know what to do or maybe how to keep warm, then maybe this video is for you. And before we get into some of my not so obvious ideas, let's just go through some of the actual obvious ones because they are also very important. And now there are many more ways out there that you could do to keep warm, and these are just a few. So make sure you go out there and do your own research. The most obvious is clothes. Layers, layers, layers. It is important to not have just one piece of warm clothes that you would wear all the time, and instead just have layers of thinner or less warm clothes that you can put on and take off. When you get cold, you can add more layers, and when you get hot, you can remove some layers. This allows you to more easily regulate your body temperature. And this is important because you don't want to be underdressed and get cold, but then again, you don't want to be overdressed and get hot and possibly start to sweat, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And this leads me to the next obvious one, is you want to stay dry. Try to stay dry as best you can. If it's raining out or if it's snowing and you're getting wet, try to wear rain gear or something that's going to keep you as dry as possible. Because basically if you get wet, you can risk getting hypothermia. And of course, there's having the right gear for the right weather. Having the right gear as far as your shelter, your sleep system, and your clothes in winter is paramount. All of these things will work together in some way, shape, or form to help keep you warm on your trip. So you want to make sure that you have the gear that's going to be able to keep you warm in the weather that you expect. Now, some of the ones that may not be too obvious, but first there is one misconception that I want to get out of the way. Now, this isn't something you can do to be warm, but if you understand this principle, it can help you a lot in whatever you need to do to stay warm. And that is, your sleep system does not make you warm, it keeps you warm. Now, there is a difference, and hear me out. Your top quilts, your under quilts, your sleeping bag, your sleeping pads, they don't make you warm. They don't generate any kind of heat unless you can plug them in like an electric blanket, and they do not do anything to make you warm. They don't generate heat. Basically, what generates heat at night to keep you warm is your own body. You're your own heating unit. Your body is what makes you warm in your sleep system by generating that body heat. And what your sleep system does is it holds in that body heat, which helps keep you warm. And in the case of most sleeping bags and quilts, they use loft. The thicker they are, the warmer you're going to be. And what loft is basically it creates dead air space in the quilt or sleeping bag where it traps in that heat. And that trapped heat is what makes you feel warm. So remember that when you're getting into your sleep system at night, that if you're already warm, you're probably going to stay warm and feel warm throughout the night. If you get into your sleeping system cold, it might be a little bit more difficult to get warmed up. Because again, your sleep system uses your body heat. So what's the point of that? Don't go to bed cold. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later too. Now let's get into my 5 not so obvious tips on staying warm. First is over insulating. Now this one really isn't that obvious, and to be frank, I don't really hear too many people talking about this when they talk about ways to stay warm in winter backpacking trips. And that is, you can over insulate yourself when you go to bed. You may think that the more clothes you wear when you go to bed, the warmer you're going to be. That's not always entirely true. So actually you could put more on than is needed and you can actually feel cold. It doesn't equate that your overall body's going to be cold, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be body parts that are cold. And believe me, I've been there and done that. And here's an example. In January 2020, I was on a backpacking trip. The temperature was around 20 degrees Fahrenheit at night and maybe a little lower, but the wind chill was about 8 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was tent camping. And on that trip, I was wearing a new pair of pants that were made of some kind of neoprene material. Now, they were windproof, they were waterproof, and they were lined with some kind of fleece. And I was also wearing base layer pants. And they were really warm pants. Anyway, when I went in my tent and got in my quilts, I didn't take off those hiking pants. Why? Well, I was just too lazy. I just didn't feel like doing it. It was cold out. And in addition, I had a base layer top, my hiking shirt, and a fleece hoodie on. And on my feet, I had my possum down sleeping socks. It was about an hour or two into the night, and I just wasn't feeling warm. My legs were nice and warm. My upper body was slightly cold, but okay, and my feet were just absolutely freezing. So basically, I had 3 different temperatures going on. So I felt the outside of my pants, but under my quilt, and it was freezing cold, but my legs inside my pants were really warm. And my feet got so cold that I almost bailed, packed up, and just went home because I was seriously concerned. So basically, my body heat in my legs were totally trapped, and my upper body was partially trapped, and my feet were just left out there to freeze to death. So basically, I was over-insulated on the top and bottom, and what that did was that prevented heat from my body to circulate throughout my quilt and help keep my entire body warm, which was why my legs were really warm and almost sweating. My upper body was okay, and my feet were cold. So I did pretty much the exact opposite of what most people would really think to do, and I took off those layers. I took off the pants, I took off the fleece, and basically I just went down to my base layer with my socks and just my hiking shirt on. And what happened? Oh, within a couple minutes, maybe to 15 minutes, I was nice and toasty warm all over, including my feet. So basically, I wasn't wearing anything that would trap in the body heat of that area. All the body heat went around and circulated, and my quilt and my sleeping pad just kept all that heat in. So even now on my coldest trips, I don't wear that much. I wear my sleeping socks, my base layer top and bottom, and maybe a long sleeve shirt over top of that. So there's a caveat to that. And being over insulated only can happen really if you have the correct sleep system for the temperatures you're in. So if it's maybe 20 degrees or 15 degrees and your sleep system is rated to 0, then you're gonna be fine with just wearing a base layer. If it's 20 degrees out and your sleep system is rated for 30 degrees or even 40, well, you will have to put layers on. That's gonna be the only way you're gonna stay warm. So being over insulated in this context assumes that you do have the correct sleep system. And if you do have the correct sleep system, you don't need all those layers. You just need to be smart about it. The next one is another one that not a lot of people talk about, and that's food. Food is very important in the winter. You need to consider the types of food and the amounts of food and even the times that you eat the food. All these things are important in cold weather. Now, as far as types of food, now this is just my opinion on those types of food. There may be other types of food you have or dietary considerations that you need to take into account. Again, this is what works for me. So I would recommend that you have foods that are higher in fat and higher in protein. They take a little bit longer to digest, they provide energy over a longer period of time, and in doing all that, it generates heat. It basically provides a fuel source for a longer period of time, which will help you generate heat for a longer period of time. Just like you need to eat a certain amount of food when you're hiking to keep your energy levels up, it's the same when you're at camp or when you're winter backpacking, where you need to eat a certain amount of food to help keep you warm. So when you go winter backpacking, take that real food and cook your food and have a good time and make a lot of good food to eat. Next one is something you really don't think about in the winter, and that's staying hydrated. Sure, you think about that a lot in the summer because of the heat and you're sweating, but it kind of slips your mind in the winter, and I'm guilty of it. And you just feel that it's cold. You're not sweating that much. It's not hot out. So you just think you just don't need that much water, but you really do. And sometimes when I'm out in the cold, I just don't drink a lot. I just don't feel like drinking for some reason. But I have to force myself to because I know being hydrated is very important. Why is it important? Well, you can get dehydrated just as easily and fast in the winter as you can in the summertime. Drinking plenty of water will help regulate your body temperature and just overall keep you warmer. And this is because when you get dehydrated, your body limits the amount of blood going to the surface of your skin and your body. And your warm blood is what keeps you feeling nice and warm and toasty. So this is why when you don't drink enough water and you get slightly dehydrated or even dehydrated, you feel cold. Your blood isn't going to the surface of your skin and the warmth along with it. So you just feel cold. And that's one thing you don't want to feel in the wintertime is cold. So drink plenty of water because, believe it or not, it's actually important to help keeping you warm. So the next one is kind of obvious. It's staying out of the wind. So you want to try to find a camp or set up camp, or at least your shelter, out of the wind. The wind can just suck the heat right out of you. And in the case of tent camping, you want to make sure that your tent's in an area where it's not going to get hit by a lot of wind directly. And if that can't always be helped, because believe me, it can't always be helped, you can do things like finding logs. If it's snowing out, you can pile up snow or rocks around the perimeter of your tent, kind of make a wall to help block some of that wind from coming in. And with a hammock, you want to do something similar. You want to try to place it in an area where it's not going to be hit by wind. And you can do similar things. In a hammock with a tarp, you can pitch your tarp very low to help block the wind. You can also pile up snow around the perimeter of the tarp and rocks or whatever, logs, and that will help prevent the wind from blowing in. And also with hammocks, you can do something that I do, and I use an underquilt, and it's a piece of material that goes and surrounds your quilt, and it helps block wind and moisture from blowing under your tarp and taking that heat out from your underquilt. In addition to that, some hammocks even have top coverage you can get. Mine does, and this keeps the air out of the top of your hammock. Or if you don't have that and you don't have an underquilt, you can just get what's called a winter sock, which totally encompasses your entire hammock setup to keep the wind out and the heat in. And at the end of the day, you just want to minimize the amount of wind that's hitting you. Next one is don't go to bed cold. Like I said before, if you go to bed cold, it's going to be difficult for you to get warm. Because remember, your warmth is kind of generated by your body heat. So if you go to bed cold and shivering, it's going to be hard for that body heat to keep you warm because there's not much of it. And there's a couple things that I try to do before I get into either my tent or my hammock. And this is regardless if I feel cold or not. One thing I do is I try to always eat something. I try to eat something with around 200, 300, 400 calories that's made of fat and protein right before I go to bed. That way it'll take hours and hours for that to digest, and at your core it generates heat, and that can help you feel warmer. And it will provide energy to your body throughout the night to help keep your body generating that body heat, which is basically what keeps you warm. Because to generate body heat, you need the appropriate energy. And sometimes what I do is I like to just have a hot drink before I go to bed. A lot of times with that snack or food that I'm eating. And as well as being a morale booster, it provides some kind of instant feeling of warmth right before you get into bed. So again, if you feel cold before you go to bed, drink a hot drink. Also, if you're feeling cold before you go to bed, do some exercises. You know, do jumping jacks or walk around or run around your camp, but be careful, don't trip and fall. Or saw some wood, or do something that helps your body warm up. Do whatever you need to do to get your body heat up before you go in to bed. And sometimes you may get cold throughout the night. I mean, it just happens. It happens to everybody. So what do? Well, you're gonna have to get up, get out, and either do some jumping jacks, do some exercises, or have a hot drink. And if your food bag's hung and you don't have your hot chocolate or your apple cider, then even just heat up some water, drink some hot water. That has the same effect. Just make sure you just don't go to bed cold, and eat something before you go to bed. And now here's a bonus. It's kind of a little hack. Like I said before, you can ultimately get cold even if you go to bed warm. So what I do when I go winter backpacking is I take a bunch of these. These are hand warmers, and these are specifically the super warmers. They last 18 hours and they are really big. And I take a few of these along with me for the sole reason that if I get cold in the middle of the night and I can't get warm, this is that heat source. That if my body can't generate the heat, then this will. And it's not much. I can tell you it's not much heat, but you put a couple of these, maybe throw one in your foot box, and it definitely helps. It's just another method of generating heat besides your body inside your sleep system. You will actually be surprised at how warm and how much they can help. Do you have any tips that you use to help keep you warm in the winter? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe and share. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.